My name is Grace. If you're listening to this, I want you to know this isn't an easy story to tell. My voice might tremble, my words might break, but these memories have lived inside me for too long. I grew up in a house that looked ordinary from the outside. A little garden with dying flowers, a cracked front gate, the faint sound of neighbors' laughter spilling from their homes. To strangers, it might have seemed like just another quiet place in a quiet town. But inside those walls, there was no laughter. There was only fear. My father was a man with heavy footsteps, the kind you could hear before he even entered the room. The kind that made your heart race, not with joy, but with terror. I was the only child. My mother, she tried to protect me, but she was fragile, broken by years of the same cruelty. She had no voice left. And me? I learned to live in silence. When I was little, I used to draw pictures of places I had never seen. Wide fields, open skies, a little house by a river filled with light. I would hide those drawings under my bed, because if my father ever found them, he would tear them apart, shouting that dreams were useless. But they weren't useless to me. They were my escape. The only way I could breathe in a world that never let me live. I remember one night so vividly, it still plays in my mind like a broken record. I was about 10 years old. My father came home late, his anger sharp, his words sharper. My mother tried to calm him, but it only made him louder. I sat in the corner, clutching my little notebook of drawings, praying he wouldn't notice me. But he did. He snatched the notebook from my hands, flipping through the pages with disgust. "This," he barked. "You think life is like this? Rivers? Flowers? Happiness? These are lies, Grace. Useless lies." And then, in front of me, he tore the pages into shreds. My drawings, my only little pieces of hope, scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. I wanted to scream, to grab them, to tell him they meant everything to me. But I couldn't, because I knew if I opened my mouth, his hands would follow. So I just sat there, silent tears streaming down my face, as the only world I had ever created burned in his anger. That night, my mother crept into my room and held me as I cried. She whispered, "Don't stop dreaming, Grace. Promise me you won't stop. One day, these dreams will save you." Her voice shook, but her words rooted themselves deep in me. And I promised, no matter what happened, no matter how broken I became, I would never stop dreaming. That was the beginning of years filled with fear, silence, and small stolen moments of hope. And this is my story. A story not just of pain but of survival. Because even in the darkest nights, a part of me kept whispering, "Hold on, Grace. Hold on." When I turned 13, I thought maybe life would change. I thought maybe, as I grew older, my father would see me differently, not as a child to break, but as a daughter to love. I was wrong. If anything, his anger grew sharper, his voice louder, his hands heavier. Teenage years are supposed to be filled with laughter, secrets with friends, school dances, and late-night dreams. But for me, those years were only filled with survival. Every single day felt like walking on glass barefoot, never knowing which step would make everything shatter. At school, I wore a mask. I smiled. I laughed at jokes. I raised my hand in class. Teachers called me bright, talented, full of potential. But inside, I was drowning. Nobody knew that the books I carried to school weren't just homework. They were shields. I would slip tiny notes, tiny stories I wrote between the pages. Stories of another life. A life where Grace was free, where she had a real father who loved her, where she wasn't afraid to exist. And every time my father's shadow fell over me at home, I clung to those stories. I remember one afternoon after school, I stayed in the library longer than usual. The sun was setting, golden light pouring in through the windows. I should have gone home, but the thought of walking through that front door, it made my chest tight. So I sat there writing. My pen moved across the page like it was the only way my soul could breathe. I wrote about a girl who lived by the ocean, who painted seashells and sang in the wind. A girl who was loved. For a while, I forgot about the bruises, the shouting, the silence. For a while I was free, but freedom never lasted long. When I finally walked home, the sky had already turned dark. My father was waiting. His face was a storm. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice like thunder. "At the library," I whispered. His eyes narrowed, sharp as knives. "Books won't save you, Grace. Do you understand? They're worthless, just like you." And then came the blow, the one that made my ears ring and my vision blur. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but my mother's eyes stopped me. She stood in the corner, her hands trembling, her lips pressed together so tightly I thought they might bleed. She wanted to speak. I could see it, but fear held her down like chains. So I stayed silent. Again. That night, as I lay in bed, I pressed my notebook against my chest. I whispered to it, like it was alive. One day, these words will save me. One day, someone will read them and know that I was here, that Grace existed, that I mattered. But deep inside, a small part of me wondered, would I ever survive long enough for that day to come? Because every year, his anger grew heavier. And every year, my hope felt thinner, like a thread slowly fraying, waiting to snap. By the time I was 16, something inside me began to change. The silence that had once protected me started to feel like a prison. I was tired of being invisible, tired of shrinking whenever my father entered the room, tired of swallowing my words, my pain, my very existence. Something inside me whispered, "Grace, you deserve to be heard." It started small. One morning at breakfast, when my father barked at my mother for the tea being too cold, I spoke. "Stop yelling at her," I said softly, my voice trembling. The room froze. My mother's spoon clattered against the table. My father's eyes, dark and furious, locked on mine. "What did you say?" he growled. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding, but somehow the words slipped out again. I said, "Stop yelling at her." For a moment, he just stared, stunned that the quiet, obedient Grace had dared to speak. But then the storm came. His hand struck the table so hard the dishes rattled. He leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. "You don't tell me what to do. You don't speak against me. Do you understand? This house has one voice, and it is mine." I wanted to disappear, to curl into myself and vanish. But another part of me, small, fragile, but fierce, whispered, "Don't back down." So I looked at him, tears blurring my vision, and I whispered back, "Not anymore." That night was hell. His anger erupted like never before. Words turned to shouts, shouts turned to blows. My mother tried to step in, but he shoved her aside like she was nothing. By the end, I was left on the floor, bruised and broken, my breath ragged. But even through the pain, one thought kept burning in me. I spoke. For the first time, I spoke. And even though it hurt, even though it nearly destroyed me, there was power in that moment. The next day at school, I couldn't hide the marks. My teacher pulled me aside, her eyes full of worry. "Grace, did someone hurt you?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her everything. The years of fear, the nights of tears, the bruises hidden under long sleeves. But my father's shadow loomed in my mind, and the words froze in my throat. I just shook my head. "I fell," I whispered. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push further. And I walked away, carrying the weight of silence all over again. That night, my mother came to me. She held my hand tightly, her eyes wet with tears. "Grace," she whispered, "please stop fighting him. Please. I can't lose you." Her words broke me, because I wasn't just surviving for myself anymore. I was surviving for her. But inside, I knew the truth. If I kept staying silent, I was already losing myself. 16 years old, and I felt trapped between two worlds. Silence that killed me slowly, or words that might destroy me instantly. Either way, I was breaking. And that was the moment I realized if I didn't find a way out, one day, there would be nothing left of Grace at all. When I turned 17, I realized something very clearly. If I stayed in that house much longer, I would not survive. My father's cruelty was no longer just shouting or slaps. His rage had become unpredictable, dangerous, like a fire that could consume everything at any moment. I began to see the truth that my mother had tried so hard to hide. One day, his hands could kill me. And so, for the first time in my life, I started to dream not just of another world, but of a way to reach it. It began with small steps. At school, I used the library not just to write stories, but to read about colleges, scholarships, and programs for girls who wanted to escape difficult homes. I wasn't even sure such things would ever accept me, but reading about them felt like breathing fresh air. Late at night, when the house was silent and my father's snores filled the hallway, I would sit by the window with my notebook. In it, I wrote plans, secret plans. Page after page, I filled with questions. Where could I go? How much money would I need? Who could I trust? What would happen if he found out? Every word felt like both a risk and a promise. I saved tiny amounts of money, coins from my lunch change, little things I found. I kept them hidden inside the cover of an old, dusty book my father never touched. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. I also began to notice people who cared. My literature teacher, Mrs. Howard, would always pause when she saw me lost in thought. One day she said quietly, "Grace, you write like someone who carries heavy things inside her. Don't let those things crush you." I wanted so badly to tell her everything, but fear chained my tongue again. Still, her words stayed with me. They were like a candle in my darkness. But every small hope came with a shadow. My father grew suspicious of me. "Why'd you stay late at school?" he demanded one evening. "To study," I replied quickly. "Study? Girls don't need studies. Girls need discipline." His words cut deep, and I saw the flicker of anger in his eyes. From that moment, I knew one wrong move, and he would crush not just my dreams, but me. One night, when my mother and I were in the kitchen, she found one of my notebooks left open on the counter. My heart froze as I realized what she was holding, my secret escape plan. Her eyes scanned the page, then lifted to mine. "Grace, what is this?" she whispered, fear and sadness mixing in her voice. Tears welled in my eyes. "Mom, I can't stay here. If I don't leave, he'll destroy me." She looked at me, her lips trembling. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, to my shock, she pulled me into her arms and held me tighter than she ever had before. "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know, Grace. I've been so afraid. I wanted to protect you, but I don't have the strength. Maybe you do. Maybe you can be the one to escape this." Her words shattered something inside me, because it wasn't just my dream anymore. It was hers too. From that night, my escape plan wasn't just a secret. It was a mission. I studied harder, saved more, and told myself every single day, "Hold on, Grace. Just a little longer. You'll get out. You'll be free." But with every day that passed, my father's anger grew closer to the breaking point. And deep down, I knew before freedom came, there would be a storm I might not survive. It happened on a night I will never forget. The night my father discovered the truth. I had hidden my notebook, the one filled with dreams and plans, inside the lining of my school bag. For months, it had been safe there. I thought I was careful enough, but monsters always find ways to destroy what little light you hold. That evening, he came into my room without knocking. His eyes searched the shelves, the drawers, the corners. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest like a warning drum. "What are you hiding, Grace?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. Nothing," I whispered. And then he found it. My bag. My notebook. He flipped through the pages, his face twisting with rage as he read my words. My secret thoughts about leaving, about escaping him, about wanting a life beyond his fists and fury. For a moment, The silence was louder than thunder. Then his voice roared. You think you can run away from me? You think you can betray me like this? You belong to me, Grace. Do you hear me? You are mine. His hand struck me so hard I fell to the floor. The notebook scattered, pages flying like broken wings around the room. I reached for them desperately, as if saving those pages could somehow save me. But he kicked them away, tearing them in half, shredding them until my dreams lay in pieces at his feet. That night, the beating was worse than any before. His rage was endless, his hands merciless. My body shook with every blow, but the pain inside my heart was greater. Because he wasn't just destroying me, he was destroying the only future I had imagined for myself. I remember lying on the floor, blood on my lips, my vision fading. My mother screamed, begging him to stop. She threw herself over me, shielding me with her own body. Please, she cried. You'll kill her. Her words stopped him for only a moment. He dropped back, panting heavily, his eyes wild with fury. If she tries again, he snarled, I will finish her. Do you hear me? I will end her life before I let her disgrace this family. Then he stormed out, leaving us in broken silence. That night, as my mother cleaned my wounds with trembling hands, tears streamed down her face. Grace, she whispered, her voice trembling, you have to leave. Not later. Not one day. Soon. Before it's too late. Her words cut through my pain. Because I knew she was right. The storm had broken. And if I stayed, the next time might be the last. But how could I leave her behind? How could I walk out and save myself while she remained trapped in his darkness? The questions tore at me, even as sleep pulled me under. But one thing was certain. My father had destroyed my notebook. He had destroyed my plan. But he hadn't destroyed me. Not yet. And as long as I was still breathing, I would find another way. The days after the storm felt like walking through shattered glass. Every step hurt. Every breath was heavy with fear. My father watched me closer than ever. He no longer trusted my silence, no longer believed my downcast eyes. His shadow followed me from room to room, like a prison guard watching a prisoner. But deep inside, something had changed. I was no longer just dreaming of escape. I was planning it. Because now I knew the truth. If I stayed, my story would end in that house, with broken bones, broken dreams, and silence forever. At school, I started preparing quietly, carefully. I spoke to no one directly, but I read more. I learned about shelters for women, about helplines, about places where strangers could protect girls like me. The thought scared me. Trusting strangers? Leaving everything I knew behind? But I reminded myself, anything was better than dying inside that house. I saved coins again, little by little. This time I hid them inside my shoes, taped under the insoles where no one would look. Each coin felt like a small heartbeat of hope. One afternoon, after class, Mrs. Howard, my literature teacher, stopped me. She had seen the fading bruises on my arm, the tired look in my eyes. Grace, she said softly, you don't have to tell me everything. But if you ever need a safe place, if you ever need someone to stand by you, I'll be there." Her kindness almost broke me. For a moment, I wanted to fall into her arms and tell her everything. But I couldn't. Fear still chained me. Instead, I just nodded and whispered, "Thank you." Her eyes told me she understood more than I said. At night, when my father was asleep, my mother and I whispered like conspirators in the dark. "You must be careful," she told me, her hands trembling as she held mine. "If he finds out again, he won't stop. Grace, you need to leave. Soon." Tears filled my eyes. "But what about you, Mom? I can't just abandon you." She smiled sadly, brushing my hair back from my bruised forehead. "My darling, I lost my freedom a long time ago, but you still have a chance. Don't waste it on me. If you survive, then maybe all my suffering will mean something." Her words cut deeper than any wound my father had given me, because she was right. She had given her life to protect me, to keep me alive through the storms. And now it was my turn to make her sacrifice worth something. The night before my 17th birthday, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. 17 years old. Most girls my age were thinking about parties, about friends, about dresses and laughter. And here I was thinking about survival. I whispered to myself, "Grace, tomorrow, you begin again. Tomorrow you choose life." But choosing life meant risking death. Because if he caught me, I knew what would happen. He had promised it with his own lips. Still, I closed my eyes and made a vow. I would not die in that house. The morning came heavy with silence. My father sat at the breakfast table, his face hard, his presence like a wall of iron. My mother placed food in front of him, her hands shaking just enough for me to notice. He glanced at me with narrowed eyes, as if he could see the thoughts I carried. "Don't think I've forgotten," he muttered. "Don't think you can trick me." I lowered my gaze, pretending obedience. But inside, my heart whispered,
"Soon."
Just a little longer. That afternoon, after school, I lingered near the library. I told my mother I would come home late. With shaking hands, I dialed a number I had memorized from a flyer in the counselor's office, a helpline for girls in danger. The woman on the other end spoke gently. "Hello, sweetheart. Are you safe right now?" The question broke me. No one had ever asked me that before. I don't think so," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. She guided me, step by step. She told me there were shelters, that there were people who could protect me, that I didn't have to face this alone. Her words were like oxygen after drowning. For the first time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as cruel as the walls of my house. But even hope comes with danger. When I came home that night, my father's eyes locked onto me. "Where were you?" he demanded. "I stayed to study." I lied, my voice shaking. His eyes narrowed, suspicion burning. "You think I'm a fool? You think I don't see what you're doing?" My heart raced. Did he know? Had he somehow heard the call? He slammed his fist on the table, making me jump. One more step out of line, Grace, and I swear, I'll make sure no one ever hears your voice again. His words were a knife pressed against my throat. But even as fear burned inside me, another voice whispered louder.
Keep going.
Don't stop. You're closer than ever. That night, I lay awake clutching the tiny coins hidden in my shoes, whispering to myself over and over, just a little longer, Grace. Hold on. The world is waiting. The world is waiting for you. The night of my 17th birthday was the night I chose to risk everything. I had hidden my small bundle of coins in my shoes, tucked away my last pieces of courage inside my trembling chest. My mother pressed a folded paper into my hand, the address of a shelter that she had once heard about from a neighbor, whispered like a forbidden prayer. She hugged me tighter than ever before, her tears soaking into my hair. Go, Grace, she whispered. Don't look back. Live the life I couldn't. I wanted to stay. I wanted to save her too. But her eyes told me the truth. She was already lost in the chains of his violence. If I stayed, we would both be destroyed. So I kissed her hand and whispered, I'll come back for you. I promise. That night, I waited until the house was silent. My father's snores echoed through the walls like a monster at rest. I crept toward the door, my school bag on my back, my shoes carrying the weight of my hidden escape. My heart pounded so loudly, I thought it might wake him. Each creak of the wooden floor felt like thunder. I opened the front door slowly, so slowly, until the cool night air touched my face. For the first time in years, I felt the taste of freedom on my lips. I stepped outside. 1 step, 2 steps. But then, Grace. His voice tore through the night like lightning. I froze. My father stood at the doorway, his silhouette dark against the dim light of the house. His eyes burned with fury. Where do you think you're going? My breath caught in my throat. My hands shook. But for the first time, I didn't bow my head. I didn't whisper an excuse. Instead, I said softly, away. His face twisted with rage. He stormed toward me, his steps heavy, his fists clenched. You think you can leave me? You think you can run from me, Grace? You're mine. You'll always be mine. He grabbed my arm, his grip iron and cruel. I cried out, struggling, my bag falling to the ground. No! I screamed, my voice breaking through the silence of the street. I am not yours. I am not your prisoner. For the first time, I fought back. I twisted, kicked, clawed. Every ounce of fear turned into desperate strength. But he was stronger. His hand struck my face, sending me crashing to the ground. My vision blurred, the world spinning. He loomed over me, his voice a hiss of venom. I warned you, Grace. Tonight, you'll learn what happens when you disobey me. And then something changed. From the doorway, my mother appeared. Her eyes burned with a fire I had never seen before. In her hands, she held the heavy iron pan from the kitchen. Leave her, she screamed. For the first time in her life, she fought back. She swung the pan with trembling strength, striking him across the shoulder. He roared in pain, stumbling back. "Run, Grace," she cried. "Run now." My body shook, but my legs obeyed. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my torn bag, and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every step was a prayer, every breath a desperate cry for life. Behind me, I heard shouting, crashing, the sound of my mother's defiance. I wanted to turn, to help her, but her last words echoed in my ears. "Run, Grace.
Run."
So I did. I ran through the empty streets, tears streaming down my face, my lungs burning. I ran until the world blurred, until my shoes bled against the pavement, until the house of horrors was nothing but a shadow behind me. When I finally reached the corner near the bus station, I collapsed on the bench, clutching the folded paper with the shelter's address. My whole body shook, my heart pounding with terror and grief. I had escaped, but at what cost? Was my mother alive? Would he come after me? Would I ever truly be free? The questions clawed at me, but the night air whispered something else, something fragile but real. For the first time in my life, I was outside. I was away. I had a chance. And even if the road ahead was filled with fear and loss, one truth burned in my chest. I was not his anymore. My name is Anna, and I am Grace's sister. I am the one left behind to tell her story. The night she ran away, I woke to the sound of shouting. I crept from my room and saw everything. The way Father dragged her. The way Mother fought back for the first and last time. I saw Grace's bag fall. I saw her break free. And then I saw her run into the night like a wounded bird chasing the sky. I wanted to run with her. I wanted to scream her name, but fear chained me to the floor. I never saw her face again. The house fell silent after that night. Father was never the same. His rage grew darker, and Mother's body grew weaker. He punished her for helping Grace, and in his cruelty, he broke the last light left in her eyes. One evening, I found Mother lying still on the kitchen floor, her breath gone, her lips cold. Father told me she fell, but I knew the truth. The truth always lived in the bruises. From that day on, I carried two ghosts inside me, Mother's and Grace's. But Grace was different. Grace had escaped. Grace had fought. Grace had chosen life, even if it cost her everything. Sometimes, late at night, when Father's snores rattled the walls, I pressed my hands to the window and prayed that she had found safety, that someone had held her trembling hands, that she had been given a bed without fear, a world without chains. But deep inside, I feared the worst, because Father had gone looking for her. He came home one night with scratches on his arms, his knuckles bleeding, and his eyes wild. I asked him where Grace was. He only smiled, a smile so cold it froze my soul. From that night on, he never spoke her name again. Years passed. The house grew darker, smaller, emptier. And then, one day, Father himself was gone, taken away in handcuffs after the neighbors finally called the police. But it was too late for Mother, too late for Grace, and too late for me, because all I had left were their memories. People sometimes ask me why I speak about Grace now, why I tell her story in schools, in shelters, in places where broken girls sit with broken hearts. I tell them because I must, because silence is the grave my father tried to bury us in, because Grace deserves more than silence. She deserves to be remembered. She deserves to be loved. She deserves to live on in every girl who hears her name and whispers, "I am not alone." So this is her story. The story of a girl named Grace, a girl who lived in fear, but chose courage. A girl who ran into the night and may have fallen, but whose footsteps still echo in the hearts of those who listen. If you hear her story, promise me this. Don't let it end here. Speak for her. Fight for her. Live for her. Because somewhere, in the quiet corners of the world, there are still girls like Grace, still praying for someone to listen, still waiting for someone to say, "You are not alone. You are not his. You are free."